Welcome, everybody, to RacerXOnline.com. That's right, it's 2022 season. We're just going to keep pumping these videos out here for you guys. Again, 2022, refinement year. Not a lot of changes to a lot of machines. You're staring at the 22 Husqvarna FC 250 Moto version, right? So we're going to be hitting the track at Glen Helen Raceway today. And even though there is no changes to this bike, we are going to try to get 3 different types of riders, give you some feedback. And the question that we always get here is, how does it compare to a KTM? Should I buy a FC or should I buy a SXF? So we're going to compare those 2 models, give you the actual differences on the track, which one you should buy, 3 different types of guys here, and you'll get my opinion. So any which way you want to slice it, we'll have a direction for you guys on the 22 FC 250. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with all of our collective opinions. All right, guys, what's up? We are here with Team Maryland. As you guys can see from the intro, I wasn't smiling that much, but man, I am overwhelmed with joy and excitement because I'm with my 2 favorite guys right here. If you guys know me, you guys know I'm Team Runkles, and I've been on the Runkles train for over 2 years. You guys want to know how it all started, you go to Pulp, you can figure all that out. But Kenny Day, me and Kenny go way back. He's helped me with Keefer testing for, what, 2 years now?
2 years now, yeah.
So I brought these guys in. Obviously, he's here to ride the Nationals. He went to Paula, and he's going to Hangtown. He's been killing it. So Jake, you don't mind if I call you Jake?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Jake is 5'7". My little Hobbit guy here, he's 5'6 3/4.
With tall shoes on, yeah.
I'm 6 foot. I brought my son in, so we got an array of riders here to talk about the 2022 FC 250. Again, like the intro says, no changes here, but Jacob here is mostly on 450s, 158 pounds, so he's still 250F material in the weight range. Pleasantly surprised about the chassis feel and, of course, having the air fork. You're not on air fork when you race. You're on a you're on a WP cone valve. But tell us a little bit about the chassis and the suspension being on a 250. You haven't been on 250 over 2 years.
Yeah, and I've actually never rode this composite subframe, so I was actually pleasantly surprised. It felt a little stink buggish when I first got on, and I was like, yeah, I'll just run it, see how it feels. And it actually held up very well. Like, it didn't dive under heavy braking, which I thought it would with these big hills. And no, it was great. It held up great.
So it's funny to me, like sometimes you guys know I'm guilty of talking trash on air forks, but there is some adjustability. Coming from a guy who races professional, very fast, on-spring fork, he can hop on this and have a good time. So sometimes when we nitpick little things here when we test, doesn't necessarily mean it's horrible. It just means some things aren't as good as others. But Jake here is a perfect example of, hey, man, I haven't rode air forks in a long time, and I can get along with it. Being 158 pounds, wasn't too much pitching for him, so that is good. That is a good news. My guy here has been on a Suzuki RMZ 250, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the differences between hopping on this and then the old RM Army here.
No offense to the RM Army, but it doesn't compare to this thing. I will totally say there's some big hills here at Glen Helen, and you can stop on the insides, basically dead stop and just roll on, and this thing takes off. Like, whereas if I'm on a Suzuki, I got to ride it like a 125 to just kind of get it going. So same thing I've said about these engines before, whether it's the Husky or the KTM, they just go forever. Like, it's kind of hard to find that rev limit. That ceiling's really high. and you'll never find it. You just keep clicking gears. So the power delivery of this thing is sweet, especially if you put it in map 2. Very snappy, and just keeps on going.
Yeah, so map 1 is a more standard map. We put Jake, he's been on map 1. I'm sure you didn't change anything when you're out there.
No, I didn't. I don't know which map I ran, actually.
Yeah, and you guys at home, most of the time when I have guys put on the seat right here, they don't know. They're like, oh, I didn't even know. I just rode it and it was good. So map 1, long, linear power, not as much roll on. Map 2, a little bit more snappy down low and maybe not as tall up top, so you have to short shift a little bit. What I do like about this engine, going off of what Kenny said, out of all the bikes in the 250 class, KTM, Husqvarna, GasGas, they pull the longest. They feel like you can just keep pulling second and third gear. And the beauty of that is it doesn't require you to having to rev it out all the time. You can short shift this bike. Now, this bike doesn't short shift as good as a YZ250F, but the recovery on the Husqvarna, to me, is a little bit better than the GasGas, and the KTM's a little bit better than this. It's somewhere in between. The differences between a KTM and a Husqvarna, if you're asking, just like what Jake said, composite subframe, different swing arm, and the muffler is obviously different. The internals inside the muffler is different. Mapping is the same. We have pro taper handlebars instead of that neck and rigid piece of you-know-what that's on the KTM. I will say this, and maybe Jake can answer this too, because he's on a KTM, and obviously different CC sizes, but I noticeably feel less vibration coming from this Husqvarna versus the KTM.
Yeah, I felt that, especially out here with it being harder packed and square edged. That was probably one of the first things I noticed.
Kenny?
Yeah, I agree with Jake. I rode the KTM here not too long ago, and I felt some vibration, not a ton, but today, immediately jumping out on this, just to go along with everything, I think it may have something to do with the subframe. Just kind of gives it more of a plush feel. The bike doesn't feel like very rigid or anything, and I don't get any vibration. So.
Yeah, so for me, I think it's a combination of three things here. So we have a pro taper handlebar, which is, for me, one of the better anti-vibration handlebars out there. Composite subframe, which in theory is a little bit stiffer, right? But it feels a little bit softer on the track. And then if we're gonna really hone in on swing arms, this Husqvarna swing arm is softer laterally than the KTM. So that is also a little bit different. Jake told me when he came back, he's like, you really like that swing arm feel.
Yeah, yep. So on my GasGas, I have the same swing arm, and it just gives it a lot more comfort to me in the little chop going through a turn and everything compared to the KTM.
And Jake's not a big fan of Glen Helen. He hasn't been here that many times, but that's what Glen Helen's all about, is small, chop, acceleration. It's everywhere around here. Not a lot of ruts. If we do have ruts, we call them dishes because they're not really ruts. They're just little cups everywhere, right? So California dishes everywhere and a lot of acceleration chops. So overall, if I could nitpick one thing, and I'm going to ask these guys too, the same thing, I would like a little bit more torque feeling down low. I'm 170 pounds, so I'm the biggest guy out of all this group. I would like a little bit more oomph, a little bit more meat down low for my slow revving vet ass, so to speak. So Kenny, being a smaller guy, and let's just say Kenny, when it's time to race, he goes. That's why we never say, Kenny, we're going to do lap times. We just don't say that to Kenny. So one nitpick thing you could do on this bike, what would it be?
One nitpick thing, I say it about all of these kind of bikes, is I just feel like the fork sometimes I'm just floating. I get that floating feel. I don't always feel like I'm very stable, so I'm hesitant at times. Other than that, though, truthfully, with me being lighter, I'm right at 150 pounds right now. This thing, Map 2, I'm pretty stoked on. If there was anything more that I wanted, it would be like riding the 350. You know, like when you hop on the 350, that's what it is. It just has that little more that you're looking for, yep. And it just continues. So, but overall, as far as the 250 package, just a stock, dude, this thing's incredible.
If you had to choose, and I don't know if you rode all these bikes, but you rode a KTM 250 and you rode a Husqvarna, which one would you choose?
I think I would probably base that a little bit on where I was at it in the country. But if I was here at this track, these conditions today, I would choose this over the KTM. Compliancy, having this subframe feel, the plushness, it doesn't do anything wrong with all the square edge bumps.
All right, Jake, one thing that you would like to change. I know you're not a 250 guy, but if you're going to purchase this bike, what would you do to it?
I'd probably throw a slip-on and ignition probably right off the bat. My biggest thing was, just like you, it was the bottom end hit. I lug the bike a lot more than I rev it, so I like a good hit down low that's not too crazy, but just I like my bottom end to a bike.
Yeah, and I agree with Jake here because if I was going to do a mod, and you guys email me a lot, hey, what should I do to my bike? Give me some mods. FMF system works really good on this bike. They match, do a lot of R&D with these guys personally in Austria, so they know this engine very well. An ECU, a Vortex, really wakes up that low-end feeling. On my son's bike, that's all we have is an ECU and a muffler, and it's a completely different machine. So little things here and there do make more torque, but obviously that comes with the old coin, right? So, but for a stock bike, these things are reliable. It has a good feeling. Keep an eye on fuel filters on this. So if you run in pump fuel, sometimes you can change out that little filter inside the fuel line. Those things get a little bit clogged, so watch out for that. Check your sprocket bolts. And Jake just had an experience over the weekend. Check your top shock bolts. Those things back out a little bit.
Yep, yeah, they'll just fall out on you sometimes if you don't keep up on it.
Life of a privateer. So spokes as well. I know these wheels are not the strongest, but overall, really reliable bike, fun to ride. If you're out in the sun in California, put a towel over your seat because you might burn your behind. Because I'm feeling this thing right now. It's pretty hot. You know, it's upper 90s here today, so maybe a grip or seat cover that could help you as well. All right, last but not least, I got my son here. I've been kind of including him on some of these 250 tests because he's getting a little bit better, trying to teach him how to test. So bear with us for our family moment here. If you have a 15-year-old son and you want to know, or a girl, and you want to know what it's like for them to ride, I brought him along. So Aden owns, well, mom and dad own a KTM 250. So first thing you came back and told me is that it feels lighter on the track. Where do you feel that on the track?
It just feels lighter in corners. I feel like I can get into the corners better. It hops bumps quick. Like
You're saying quicker, I mean just you can hop bumps more, it's more lively?
yeah, like it's more lively feeling.
Engine feeling compared to your KTM, any differences for you?
It feels the same. I do notice that it does kind of feel a little bit like a 350 kind of. I kind of tripped out there for a second.
350 as in what?
Like just a smoother and broader power.
Which makes sense. So with the Husqvarna versus the KTM you're going to have a little bit more bottom end like we talked about. And this Husqvarna has a little bit more meat in the mid-range and pulling power. So more front side on the KTM. This is more on the back side, which suits different guys. We put Aden on this kind of engine, the orange engine, of course, not the white version. But it's linear, easy to ride. You still liking that power? We've tried different bikes, and you still prefer this kind of power plant?
Yes, I do.
Would you ride a Husqvarna versus your KTM?
If we set it up for me and got suspension right and put bars on it and a pipe and some stuff, then yeah, I would.
Do you notice, I mean, we go to Pro Taper bars on our bikes. Did you notice less vibration from this bike versus the KTM?
I did notice that this had a little bit less vibration up here than a KTM. It feels like a KTM, like when you hit a rev limiter, it vibrates a lot.
Yeah, for me on a KTM, I can feel the vibration through my pegs more versus this bike. And again, like we said, maybe the subframe feeling and what that does is has a different feeling on the track. But overall, the difference of the Husqvarna and the KTM, there are some. So a lot of people say, it's the same bike. We're going to say it's the 75% of the same bike and 25% it's a different feeling. And that 25% directly comes from the track and what we feel. So, Aden, overall looks, because obviously 15-year-old kids, that matters with you guys. Do you think the KTM, Husqvarna, or GasGas look better than, rank them in order?
I'm going to have to say GasGas just because the red frame is sick. KTM now, since it has a orange frame, and probably Husky. I feel like if Husky went with the white frame and they kept the same plastics and everything, then I think it'd probably look better than a KTM.
Real quick before we get out of here, suspension feeling, chassis feeling, you run a stock KTM, anything different between those two?
The chassis on this compared to a KTM, it feels softer. Like, it doesn't feel as rigid. But honestly, I don't know if I like that just because it feels too plush.
So maybe blowing through for him a little bit. He's getting a little bit more aggressive. So, yeah. So that is basically the wrap-up of the 2022 FC 250. If you have any more questions, as always, Kris at KeeferIncTesting.com. That's Kris with the K. And we'll be back here on RacerXOnline.com for more 2022 videos, garage builds, lots of cool stuff over on the print side, 12 issues, $30. We always have some kind of incentive for you guys to get the issues, something free. Lately it was Ethica's. It could be something different now. So make sure you subscribe. And of course, we'll be back here again, more intros, and we're here to please. That's right. Kris at KeeferInkTesting.com, RacerXOnline.com. See you guys later.